Hello, everyone, and welcome to MindTea, a podcast where we discuss sip-sized practical tools for meaningful living. I'm your host, Izzy Wan, a mindfulness teacher, tea ceremony host, hypnotherapist, and speaker. I'm going to start today's episode off with asking you a bold question. How many times have you ghosted someone? How many times have you wanted to ghost someone? How many times have you been ghosted? If you put your hands up for any of these, like myself, welcome to the club, and this episode is for you. We live in a time where communication has never been easier, but connection has never been harder. We can send tons of messages in seconds. We can talk to hundreds of strangers in one day. And we can call one another from any part of the world, no matter what country we're in, through the single click of a glass screen. Yet ironically, we've still forgotten how to be with one another. We've forgotten how to be present with each other, how to listen only to the person that is talking to you, and how to respond with empathy. I think this is because we've started to communicate for convenience rather than connection. So in this episode, I want to talk to you today about the importance of mindful communication, helping you to bring more awareness into your interactions with others, and also introduce key things that you can look out for that can help you express yourself clearly, compassionately, and consciously with anyone, not just your personal relationships. I'm so excited to share with you in this episode. Before we dive deep though, let's talk about why mindful communication is important. We all know communication is important, but why mindful communication? Because we often think communication is about words, but it's not. We've all heard of the phrase, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, which reveals a lot to us about the energy and the intention we are bringing to the table. Every message carries with us the energy of the state we are in at the time when we say it. For example, I could say, you're joking, or I could say, you're joking. And you can instantly tell the difference, right? Especially for those of you listening to the audio today only. Mindful communication is primarily about intention. How can we bring more intention in our interactions with others? So let's get into it today. The 3 key things that you can do to help yourself communicate more consciously in conversation with others. The first point that I want to make is something called nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, also known as compassionate communication, was developed by psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, who wanted to help people express themselves without blame, criticism, or defensiveness. So it's about understanding your own underlying needs as well as others' needs, and then communicating it in a way that acknowledges everybody's needs. This requires making clear requests, having a certain level of self-awareness, and also importantly, a willingness to have empathy. Nonviolent communication, or NVC, can be practiced in 4 simple steps. The first step is observations. So this is where you're noticing what actually happened, not the story that you attach to it. So you observe what happens without judgment, and you're focusing on the facts alone. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me when I talk to you," you can go, "In our chat this morning, I noticed you were checking your messages." This shift is important because when you prevent yourself from jumping to conclusions about someone, it helps to prevent them from jumping into defense, which then helps you both keep the conversation fixated on the problem that you were discussing, not the personal aspects of it. And then the second step is feeling. How do I feel in response? Here, you're focusing on your emotions and the sensations of them rather than spiraling down thought patterns. An important part of this step is to take ownership for how you feel, so considering what others say as the stimulus, but not the cause of your feelings. For example, you can say, "When you are checking your messages when we're speaking, I feel hurt." The reason NVC emphasizes taking responsibility for your feelings is because your feelings are actually a result of your needs or expectations of the other person at the time and how you choose to respond, rather than it being a result of their actions alone. And once you're able to acknowledge this, it starts shifting your own intentions from a state of conflict into collaboration. And step 3 of NVC is to ask yourself, what do I need or value in this situation? So step 3 is all about needs. There is a connection between our feelings and our unmet needs, needs of which are fundamental to all human beings. Our feelings can help us to understand ourselves, even the negative ones. When we feel anger, it usually tells us that our boundaries have been crossed. When we feel fear and anxiety, it tells us that we don't feel safe, whether physically or emotionally. When we feel guilt, it tells us that we have done something that does not align with our integrity and our values. So when you have identified your feelings in the previous step, you can then identify your needs or values. And this is why NVC does require a level of self-awareness as well, because you do need to dig introspectively for these needs, which requires knowing yourself. And a really good way to build this self-awareness is through regular meditation, because we're constantly creating this space between ourselves and our thoughts, observing them, observing what arises without trying to change them, simply being with them and building that awareness of how we're feeling and what we need. Step number 4, the final one, is to then make requests. Ask yourself, what specific action would help to meet that need? Now, requests are not the same as demands. Demands are considered in this case to be violent, aggressive, or intimidating. But requests mean that you do not expect others to contribute out of fear, guilt, coercion, or force, but rather out of choice, out of desire, and out of natural giving. So they must want to do these things, and if they don't, you also allow it to be. You're not saying these requests in order to ensure that they definitely carry these actions out for you. The more specific you can be about your requests at this point, and the more doable or realistic they are for the requester, the more likely you can reach that agreed outcome. In NVC, requests focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. So for example, instead of, I don't want you to check your phone when we're speaking, you can try, would you be willing to put your phone away when we are speaking? I know this sounds like quite a lot of things to consider at once, guys, and it's true. It is probably quite hard to think about all of these things when you're in conversation with someone, but the process is more there to help you build consciousness. It's there as a framework, so you can watch yourself in conversation and then respond with clarity and compassion. So that means that once you've built this consciousness within you, you may no longer need the exact process to navigate it. Your actions will naturally guide you towards this purpose, this ability to communicate non-violently with others. It's like with meditation. Meditation is there to help you build the ability of being present with yourself and your thoughts. It's a tool to build mindfulness rather than this rigid one and only way to do it. And once you have integrated mindfulness in your own life, you may not necessarily meditate in the traditional sitting cross-legged way. But you may find that every action you do, whether it's something as simple as folding your laundry or cooking a meal, becomes an experience that is full of presence and awareness in itself. In a nutshell, NVC is about fighting the problem, not fighting each other. You're focusing on needs, not the words themselves. And you're focusing on solutions, not on attacks. Now let's move on to the second thing to look out for. And this part is less about speaking, but more about listening, specifically active listening. Active listening is about listening to understand, not to respond. It's an art of being fully present with someone, not just hearing their words, but also feeling their intentions behind it, and also moving your own intentions from, I'm ready to reply, what do I say to this, to, I'm here in this moment with you and fully receiving your words. It also means directly engaging with your conversational partner too, right? So giving direct, real-time feedback to reflect that you are listening, even if you're not responding verbally, because listening signals safety. When people feel heard, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, they share more authentically. And when they share more authentically, the relationship deepens as well. So what are some active listening cues you can use to reflect your engagement in conversation? Well, when we're naturally listening and we're really engaged with someone, we normally nod. And you can nod 3 times to show you're active listening with someone, specifically a slow triple nod, which is a non-verbal technique interpreted as interest and interpreted as patience and warmth, encouraging your conversational partner to speak more. A fast triple nod, in contrast, is interpreted as impatience, like, yes, I know, move on, keep going, which can discourage your conversational partner from talking. Research actually indicates that a slow triple nod makes the other person speak around 3 to 4 times longer. Funny story, once I found out about this, I actually would just keep nodding the slow triple nod in interviews to buy me time when I didn't know how to respond to a question. So each time I've done this, it's worked pretty well. Either the interviewer will continue to elaborate on the question, or they'll summarize it again without me even needing to ask them to repeat the question. So it's a hack for you guys. Another way is to maintain soft eye contact. Now, we already know eye contact helps people to build trust and connection, just like the way I'm looking at you now in the camera. You feel more of a connection versus if I'm looking there or there or there, right? But I'm going to give you even more specific tips on eye contact, and that is looking into someone's left eye. I first heard about this in Dr. Tara Swartz's interview with Stephen Bartlett, where she talks about how when a baby is born, it learns emotions through eye contact with their mother. And most people are right-handed, meaning that they hold their babies with their left hand. So the mother is looking at the left eye of her baby, and that interaction is how they bond with each other, which carries on to adults, where the most bonding eye contact is often the one from the left eye. So you can stare at someone's left eye the next time you're talking to them and see if this makes a difference for you. And then there's also the 50-70 rule. Has anyone ever been on a date when someone is literally just looking at you directly and so intensely as if they're gazing into your soul? I have. It's pretty creepy, right? And the 50-70 rule means that you maintain eye contact for 50% of the time you're speaking and then 70% of the time you are listening. This shows confidence and it shows engagement without the other person feeling like you're about to jump onto them. And a common suggestion is actually to hold it for 4 to 5 seconds before breaking eye contact. So if you don't want a scary date away, guys, use this rule. Moving away from eye contact now, another way to show active listening is to summarize what the other person is saying, allowing the person to speak fully without finishing their sentence, and allowing them to continue fully before interrupting. Then instead of immediately responding with what your thoughts and opinions are, try and summarize the key points of what they said, maybe using the language they used, or using the precise words that they had to avoid putting words in their mouth. Doing this can help not only the other person reflect on what they were talking about, but it also helps you to reflect on what has just been said so that you can gain a deeper and clearer understanding. And then you also know at which points you want to clarify where necessary, what questions you want to ask to follow that after you've summarized everything in your head. And this brings us to our third and our final point on how to communicate mindfully, and probably the most important one of all, and this is silence. We're so afraid to be awkward nowadays that we're constantly trying to avoid silence. But one thing my mindfulness teacher always said to me was, don't be afraid of silence, embrace it. Silence is your friend. You don't have to fill every pause. You don't have to constantly ask questions. You don't have to feel the responsibility of keeping everyone entertained at all times. You can allow space for reflection for yourself and the other person. Silence actually creates deeper connection sometimes because there is nothing in that space between you and the other person. It's just pure presence and this shared energy. Why do you think you fall in love with someone when you're both looking deeply into one another's eyes? Because you're feeling, not thinking. Because you're being, not doing. You're existing, not impressing. And how often do we do any of these things in our day-to-day lives? Never really. We're always on the go. We're always trying to do and achieve that next thing. We're constantly trying to get through our day. And we rarely have time to really reflect on ourselves. It's why meditating in a group can be so powerful. Because we are literally all setting an intention. And then we're connecting deeply with our own inner spirits. Then collectively co-creating the space together from a place of love, our natural human state. It's also why we sometimes allow silences in tea ceremonies as well. Some tea ceremony hosts I know even conduct their entire ceremonies in silence as well. I personally don't do this. I do more of a mix between conversational connection and silence. But I know tea ceremony hosts who do, and they share that at first most people get quite uncomfortable with this. But it's within the discomfort that new realizations emerge at the end, and they learn to grow comfortable with the silence. Silence is a form of communication in itself, and it's a really powerful one. When you are sad, silence helps you to reflect, so that you can see what you truly need. When you are angry, silence helps you to avoid saying something that you will later regret. When you are betrayed, silence helps you to walk away with dignity, self-respect, and grace. It's what I call the sacred pause, and I've used this in every big life situation I've had so far, whether it's communicating with someone else in the moment who was trying to escalate this conversation, or maintaining my own sense of self-control in a disrespectful situation, or responding to betrayal from people in my life. I really feel that because of the sacred pause I've made in those past situations, it helps me to make a better and more informed choice. And every time I've done this, I feel better about what happened, rather than when I've just jumped quickly to respond to someone out of pressure or angst or guilt or anxiousness. When in doubt, you're not sure what to do in the moment, always pause. Find yourself first and then speak. Alright, guys, that's all I have for you today. To summarize the 3 key things that you can do to communicate more mindfully, it is to 1. Practice nonviolent communication, communicating with clarity and compassion for both yourself and the other person, and then responding in a way that acknowledges everyone's needs. 2. Practicing active listening by focusing on understanding rather than responding. And there are ways you can do this to show that you are still engaged with the other person even when you're not speaking to them verbally. 3. Embracing silence instead of avoiding silence. Okay, guys, thank you for being here. And if any of these resonated with you, let me know your key takeaway in the comments below. And if you took any value from this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could do me a favor and take a moment to subscribe and rate the show, or share it with someone you love so more people can benefit from mindfulness. Until next time, keep steeping in wisdom, and don't forget to take a moment for yourself today, even if it's just 5 minutes.